This video is about temporary negative aggregate demand shock. So first we have to start with medium round equilibrium. So we assume that output is equal to potential output, YE. Okay, for this level of output, the corresponding level of interest rate is here, RS. Okay, a bit closer here, RS. Okay, that's fine. IS curve. So here we have Mercury rule and Phillips curve. And in period 0, we assume that expected level of inflation is equal to target level of inflation. So here we are, here with Y down. Okay. So initial point is point A. However, then in period 0, we have temporary negative aggregate demand shock, which means that IS curve is going to shift to the left for one period. Okay. Okay. So let's have it here. So this is our new IS. Assuming that interest rate is the same, we have a new level of output, Y0, and for this level of output, the corresponding rate of inflation is Y0. Maybe I will do it in different ways. So for this point, here we have Y0. Okay, so we will end up period, so in period 0, we move from point A to point B. We end up with Y0, Y0, and in order to define R0, first we have to predict the shape of Phillips curve in the next period. So for pi0, here it is. Okay. So we predict Phillips curve in period 1. And for Phillips curve in period 1, expected rate of inflation will be equal to inflation in period 0. In period 0, inflation decreased in comparison to what was initially in equilibrium. So yeah, basically we know it's gonna shift down. So in period 1, this will be the optimal point of the central bank, point C, on the intercept of new Phillips curve and monetary rule. And in order to achieve this point in period 1, central bank will have to charge R0. So again, this is temporary shock, so when analyzing period 1, central bank already keeps in mind that economy is gonna get back to this initial IS in period 1. So fine, here we are. So this is everything what happens in period 0. In period 1, economy actually moves from B to C. So this interest rate finally works because there was one period lag, as you remember. So we will end up this period with Y1 and level of output Y1. So in order to define R1, first we predict Phillips curve in the next period. So again, as you remember, P0 was expected rate of inflation in period 1. P1 is expected rate of inflation in period 2. So P1 is greater than, Pi1 is greater than Pi0. So for the next period, you know, this Phillips curve is going to be located above the original Phillips curve in period 1. Just because expected level of inflation affects the value of intercept. So here we have it, PC2. So for this level, for this Phillips curve, you know, for the central band, the optimal point will be point D. And in order to be located on this point, central band will have to charge R1. So we end up period 1 with Pi1, Y1, and R1. So starting from the second period, so we shift from point C to point D. And starting from this period, you know, we will shift closer and closer to the initial point. So A is at the same time, like initial point and at the same time, you know, final point when economy will end up in the new medium run equilibrium. Since we assume that Phillips ice curve will be here only for one period, period 0, then we will get back to the initial level of interest rate. So again, let's analyze it using response functions. So again, here we have period 0. Here we have period 1. So for output, initial value was potential output, YE. Then in period 0, it decreased to Y0. Then it increased to Y1. And then it was slowly decreasing to the initial level of output. Something like this. I do not like this shape, but you got the idea. Okay, for inflation. Initially it was in pi tau, the value was pi tau until period 0, then it decreased to pi 0, and then it was slowly increasing until it reached the initial level. For interest rate, we started with RS, then RS decreased to R0 in period 0, and then it was slowly increasing until it reached the initial level. Ta-da! Okay, so that's it for this graph, and thank you for watching.